Hey everyone, John Miller here on the tech team. In this video, I want to talk about the process of running Soundcheck. So first off, I'm going to assume that you've already got some things. So you've already set up the console, you've already set up the stage, you have already done what we would call line check. So you've checked to make sure that all of those different inputs are working, and you have talked to the band. So you've said hi, you've related to them a little bit, and now it's time to actually start the process of soundcheck, which is getting solid gain values for all of those different inputs. So line check is just making sure things work. Soundcheck is really about getting the right levels coming in. Soundcheck is really about getting the right levels coming in so that all the processing downstream works the way that it's supposed to. So, because as we like to say, gain is the main thing, right? So that's because all of the compression and dynamic EQs depend on it. The musicians' in-ear mixes depend on it. If you're in the main auditorium, broadcast depends on it. So a lot of things depend on getting the gain value correct. So this process of soundcheck, that's why we care about this process of soundcheck and why I'm doing this video, and why we have sort of a systematic approach to it. Because we want that to be consistent. We want those gain values and levels coming into the console to be consistent. We also want it to be systematic so that everybody knows what to expect, right? Sound people know what to expect, the band knows what to expect, and we're all on the same page about how it should work. So one of those things is that you, the sound person, are in charge of soundcheck. So you're going to be asking people, will you play for me? Will you do this for me so I can get a good level? And if they're playing something else or playing around and being distracting and not helping, then you're also going to need to say, will you please not do that so that I can focus and get this other stuff correct? Because really everybody wants to spend that time wisely. Right? They don't want to waste a bunch of time. They want to go ahead and get to rehearsal so that they can practice the songs they need to practice. So you're helping them keep moving so that we can all get to rehearsal. So you're going to want to communicate with the worship leader and with the band, both as you progress and move along, and if there are any issues that come up. So if you have some issue that you need to deal with, then you're going to tell them, say, hey, I need to spend 2 or 3 minutes working on this thing for whatever reason, and get that figured out and taken care of so that then you can keep moving with soundcheck. And that communication allows the worship leader and the whole team to know what's going on, know what to expect, and maybe they can use that 2 or 3 minutes to pray or to discuss a song or whatever else they want to use that for. And then the last kind of thought I have before I get into the process itself is that each console has a target level that you're shooting for. So most consoles, that's going to be the first yellow LED. So like on the SD8 in the main auditorium, that happens at -8 dB. On the X32, it's at -18 dB. Now we can talk about why those are different and all the different scales and everything else, but the point is that there is a reference, there is a target that you're shooting for, and you want to hit that target when that instrument or device person is basically at full volume, or at least at a loud volume. We're not going all the way max so that there is a little bit of extra headroom, just so it doesn't clip if they happen to get a little louder. But we want to try to get their full volume as best we can during the sound check so that we're hitting the target level and not way under or way over. All right, so then the process of actually running Soundcheck. We're going to start with the drums, and I should also say this really isn't the time to mix, so you're going to set your faders kind of in a rough position, and then you're not going to worry about faders. You're just looking at gain and level coming into the console. So you're going to start with drums. You're going to ask the drummer to play a solid, sort of loud, as loud as they can, kick, hat, snare, and as they give you that groove, you're going to look at those levels and adjust the gain value to get to your target. And you're going to also listen for the kick and the snare primarily, hi-hat too, but primarily kick and snare to make sure it sounds right. There's not any kind of weird noises. It doesn't sound like it's, really, really off. It sounds like you're used to. Just to make sure that those things sound correct. You should have already taken care of mic placement. Okay, that's part of stage setup and line check. So now we're listening to make sure these things sound like we expect them to sound. So you get the gain set on kick, hat, snare. Then we're going to ask the drummer to play toms. So high tom, low tom, or however many there are. They're going to hit those toms. You're going to watch those levels, make sure they're correct. And then you can say, all right, now play the whole kit. So basically they're just adding the cymbals. And you're going to look at the overheads. You're going to look at the other mics as well to make sure they didn't, because maybe now that they're playing the whole kit, maybe they get a little louder. And so maybe you do need to bring the gain back just a hair from what you changed it a second ago. On the overhead mics, you're probably looking at the volume of the snare coming through those. Could be cymbals, although I find usually snare is louder than the cymbals. So you're going to want to watch those when they hit the cymbal and when they hit the snare and adjust for that reference level. So once we're done with drums, then we're going to move on to bass and have the bassist play nice, big, loud notes, get their gain. And then we'll have the bass and the drums play a chorus of one of the songs they're going to do together. And that'll give both of them a little more energy. They'll kind of play off of one another, and usually they'll get a little bit louder at this point. Your really experienced people will start loud, and they'll give you exactly what you need. But less experienced people, this process really helps them feel the energy that they need to feel to give you a good sound check. So we'll do drums and bass together. Let them play for just 30 seconds or so, and set their gains. Check the gains again on all the drums and the bass. Then we can move on to the other instruments. So electric, that's usually going to be asking the player to, big full strum, maybe with their overdrive pedal on. Sometimes I'll ask them to give me both clean and dirty, just to make sure there isn't a big gain difference between those two. And then keys, so they're going to give you a big kind of pound on the keyboard, nice and loud. And usually the keys player is also in charge of tracks. So then we'll go to tracks next. And with tracks, I look at the click first and make sure the click is set correctly for the gain value. And then I'll actually use that gain value. So let's say I set the click to plus 23. Well, I'm going to set all of the other channels that come from that same interface, so click, cues or guide, and then the musical tracks channels. Usually there's a stereo pair. In the main auditorium, we've been doing 2 stereo pairs, so there's tracks 1 and tracks 2. I'm going to set all of those to be the same gain and expect the person running the tracks machine then to balance between them if we need to. Because they're all coming from the same interface. They should all be able to be at the same level. The other tricky thing about tracks is that the musical tracks themselves, may be higher or lower, right? They may just have some like percussion in them, or they may just have some strings. They may not have a full band, and so they may not be at a full level. So that's why we use the click level, the gain value for the click, across all of those channels, is because sometimes it's hard to set the gain, and sometimes it varies song to song. In one song, maybe there aren't very many tracks. In the next song, it's bigger and much louder. If it's too loud, that needs to be a conversation with the worship leader or the tracks operator and say, hey, that was really loud. We probably need to bring those down. hopefully, in a kind of ideal setting, the band will hear that in their ears, and they'll know. They'll be like, okay, those tracks need to change, and you'll be on the same page. So once we finish tracks, then we'll move on to acoustic guitars, which are usually on the front line. You could have a player by themselves, and that's great. Then you would check it like electric guitar. If they're on the front line, then I will have them play their guitar, again, strum nice and big and loud, and then start singing along. So usually they're playing some part of a song that they're going to do for that set, the chorus or bridge of a song, and then they can sing along with their guitar. And so I'll get the gain for both their guitar and their voice kind of together at the same time. Then I'll move on to any other acoustic players, same thing, and then we'll finally get to the rest of the vocals. Now, on the vocals, both a guitarist and a non-guitarist, we're wanting them to give us full volume out of their voice. So that's usually, like I said, going to be a big bridge or a chorus from a song, and their mic technique also matters. So we're looking for those mics to be real close, like within an inch of their mouth, both for sound check and when they're leading songs. Now, when they're not leading a song, when they're a backing vocalist, maybe they come off of it, but we want to capture that full volume to get the correct gain setting for sound check. So the other thing that helps with that is to have some instrumentalists play along with the singer. For someone who's holding an acoustic guitar, that's obviously very easy. But for someone who's not, we're going to ask the keys and perhaps acoustic to play along with them so that they can hear the energy of those instruments in their ears and sing out with that. And if they're still struggling to, if you feel like your gain is kind of high but your level's still not high enough, then that needs to be a conversation with them and say, hey, I still really need more volume from you, right? From your mouth, from your voice. Sometimes you might need to pull their voice down in their ears. Everybody has a little bit different, their ears are different. They're going to hear things differently. So you may need to pull their voice down in their ears so that they'll sing out a little bit more. If they're really inexperienced, they might just need to get the mic closer. Hopefully your worship leader can also help you with that. I would say if you're really struggling, to leave some space, some headroom for them to get a little bit louder. So don't crank their gain all the way up to get them to the target value. Leave a little bit of room, and then go have a conversation with them after sound check, sort of in private, one-on-one, or maybe with the worship leader, and ask the worship leader to have a conversation with them. So that way, you're not doing it in front of the whole band and taking that time, while everybody's kind of staring at them. So that's some ways to help your people feel comfortable and hopefully give you full volume that you need. So, you've just checked everybody, you've got all those gains set, everything's rolling along. Now you're going to communicate back to the worship leader and say, I'm done, take it away. They can launch into rehearsal, and in that first song, again, you're going to not worry about your mix so much and what you're hearing. You're going to look at those gain values, and you're going to say, now that everybody's playing together on this song, you're going to look and see, are there any levels that are too high? Because that's usually what's going to happen, is they're going to get louder, not quieter. And so then you're going to bring those things down to hit your target level for each channel. So that's running Soundcheck. Hope this is helpful, and look forward to seeing you guys do it in person.